Welcome to Soul Night Live, number 61. Today, my guests are Tony Levin, David Torn, and Alan White. We will be joined today by their producer, Scott Shore.
Hey, brother, how you doing?
Pretty good. I love this. I love this technology. You know, it's like I'm talking to you down in Australia right now.
Dude, nice to meet you, man.
Yeah, good to meet you as well. And I've really enjoyed the music you've done with Mike and also this album. And I'm excited to hear what else you do. So thank you for coming by today.
Thanks, brother. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. So how's everything going down there?
You know, we've got kind of the same situation with the lockdowns and stuff, but we're pretty free. So everything's good. Love Australia. Obviously, I'm an expat living in a different country.
Yeah, what inspired the move?
You know, it's funny. I mean, we kind of purposely fled all the epicenters of the music business to try to get as far away from it as possible. So we started in Lazy Bones in Seattle, and my wife and I went to Hawaii for 5 years, and then New Zealand for 8 years.
Wow. And
through New Zealand, we got citizenship. So we have 2 passports, and then came over to Australia. But it's just, I found that if I'm away from all the kind of the noise of the business, a lot of the business that doesn't have to do with music, it keeps you more creative and more sane. So we've just kind of done everything not by the book, the opposite. And it's worked for us, hopefully.
That's
so
excellent.
That's my story, and that's what I'm sticking to.
I hear you. Well, I think it sounds like a cool place to be. You know, I think a lot of us wish we could be down there with you, at least for a little while,
man.
A vacation, just for starters.
Where did you grow up, Sean?
I grew up about an hour west of Kansas City.
Nice.
And in the capital of Kansas, Topeka, Kansas. And not a whole lot musically going on there either, as you can imagine. So.
Well, there's Kansas City, if I'm not mistaken, Kansas City, Missouri, and Kansas City, Kansas. Is that right?
Yeah, there's a river that runs right through town. So half of it's in one state and half's in the other. It's right, you know, sometimes rivers are the borders of states. And in that case, it is.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and Missouri's much cooler. You know, we could buy alcohol on Sunday, you know, just little things like that. Take for granted, you know, it'd be like, oh, who wants a beer today? Well, you got to drive to Kansas City.
Yeah, but you've also got the Royals and the Chiefs too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And lots of concerts. I mean, every concert I went to as a teenager, I had to drive to KC to see. Nobody would come to Topeka. There's no place to play it anyway.
Right.
So, you know, but it was okay. You know, it was a party atmosphere, as you can imagine. So an hour drive, whatever, you know, just
nice.
Ready for the fun night, you know. So yeah, we got a good turnout in the chat room today. So why don't we go ahead and get the guys in here, and it's 5 o'clock and we'll get the ball rolling.
Let's do it.
All righty.
Mm-hmm.
Hey. All right.
Oh no! Look
Hello. Hey.
Wow.
How are you, Tony?
Good. How about Alan getting the video going?
Alan.
I know it's pretty high tech here.
Right, video.
How are you? How are you keeping?
Good. Everybody good?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey,
Hey, David, how are you?
you can hear me. That's good.
Hearing you?
I'm pretty good
Good.
for this life that we're currently living. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, are we all hiding away in our little holes?
Well, Alan, can you get your video going? I miss seeing you. We don't see you.
Is everybody, can you see me?
No, we can't see Alan.
In the lower left corner, there might be a thing that says start video.
Oh, hang on. How's that?
There he
There
is.
you go.
Hey,
See your hat.
These bloody newfangled things.
Boy, it's good to get together again. Well, wait a second. We never got together.
Yeah, this is a first,
right.
isn't it?
This is a first.
Yeah, that's one thing we should touch on. We've never played together before.
Well, we played together, but we we didn't get together even virtually.
Yeah, it's a musical relationship.
So this is the first time you all have been in a room together like this. So
Even
That is
this
true.
kind of room.
I'm glad to make it happen. Well, thank you, gentlemen,
Thank
for
you.
taking time out of your busy days to come by and talk a bit about the reissue of the album. I guess it's been about 10 years now since it initially
What?
came out. I know it. I don't feel a day over 70. But time flies. And I was kind of curious, you know, initially, what was the motivation to reissue it now on vinyl?
It was a guy called Scott Shaw, I think, wasn't it?
I think so. Well, people have been asking for vinyl for a while. And, you know, with the slowdown of CD sales, we just thought it'd be a really cool album to release on vinyl. So we just decided to do it. And we did a campaign and it sold out. Thank you to everybody for supporting the campaign. And we're waiting for it to be pressed. And there you have it. It's going to be a great piece of vinyl for sure.
Actually, it was me. I bought them all. I didn't tell you that. I waited till now to tell you.
Yeah.
Can I get one? Can I buy one from you, Tony?
The price has just gone up, David.
Yeah. Didn't you notice they all had the same shipping address?
My credit is good, T.
Okay.
Well, excellent. Well, is there any chance there'll be another batch printed up, or is this the only one?
No, we kind of made it a limited edition to keep it special, so probably freeze it at that. So people that bought it are pretty stoked. Definitely be a collector's item.
Well, if they just wanted to get it on CD, is it still available like that as well?
Well, it's available digitally at Bandcamp or Lazy Bones. Lazybones.com. You see this? See that? Shameless plug. So Bandcamp, Levin Torn White, or lazybones.com. You can get it digitally, and that's how it's available.
Is the vinyl available there too, Scott, or no?
No, so the vinyl, it's all sold out, and it went through Digger's Factory. So
okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that was the distributor, Digger's Factory. I saw some of the kind of online ads.
Yeah,
Alan,
they did
I can see your face now.
Yeah, Alan, there he is.
Alan.
I salute you.
I was hiding.
Look at the hair, Alan. Wow, that is awesome. What's up with that?
My hair.
It's beautiful. It's long.
I can't go to get it cut anywhere.
Not safe.
You're
I
looking,
have the same problem.
You're looking kind of Relayer era with that long hair.
Yeah.
So keep it up.
Oh, yeah.
Endemic fashion.
The Relayer era.
Yeah.
Don't mention the war.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask how you all initially came together and how the album came to be.
But together is the optimum word.
Yeah.
Because we never were together.
Together.
Well, Scott organized it, of course, and did a great job of it. And I'd have to be reminded of all the details, but my sense is that a lot of the tracks started with Alan, because I know the last couple of days I've been listening again to the tracks, and the stuff is wild and very special, and it has a unique feel to it. And some of that is because Alan just did this out stuff, and then I played to that. Sometimes I still haven't figured out the time signature on some of it. He's playing that, I'm going to play it with him, and I'll let someone else do the math.
Sure.
And then not in every case, but some of them. And then David joined in and I'm tempted to say glued it together, but it's more like he threw a bucket of glue on top of it. It had sparkles in it, and it had pieces of stone and pieces of other things in it. So David did the David Torn thing to it, and so we came out with stuff that's pretty unusual. That's what I have to say about it. Now somebody can correct me and say, "Oh no, it started at my house" or something.
That sounds right to me. The only thing I could clarify for other people is that, Tony, you and I were, when I played, you were there while I was playing.
Scott, yeah.
And Scott was at every session. Scott, were you at the session with Alan, or did Alan send you tracks?
Yeah, he was.
No, I went to Seattle in the session with Alan. Yeah, I was there.
Right.
I was a lonely guy. I was a lonely guy in a room, and he said, "Just go do it."
Well, if we had Zoom back then, we could have just kind of,
You could have
had
been
a
there.
drink and waved. But
Whatever he was feeding you, whatever was in that tea, it was, don't throw it out. It was a good thing.
Yeah, no doubt.
I had a terrifyingly distracting thought about a week ago that kind of grew out of a dumb dream that I woke up with at 4 o'clock in the morning, my usual waking hour these days, which was we did another 2 records, but each one started with the other player. So the next one started with Tony, and then the last one started with me, so that we kept doing it in this non-playing together way. But there was, it's pretty, I know it was a dream, and
a good dream.
I think what happens nowadays is a lot of albums are being done virtually. I just finished a new Yes album, and it was all kind of done by passing stuff around on the computer. So
same here, yeah.
That's how we were working, and I guess a lot of people are doing it nowadays. So there's no reason why we couldn't do that. Start with different people.
Are they doing what we started? No, I'm just joking. We didn't start it, but we jumped on the trend 9 years before. That was the only way to do a record. Was it 2011 that we did it?
2011.
Yeah, 10 years ago now.
Wow.
Hard to believe.
Damn.
I got a question. Now, from a fan's perspective, I'm wondering, is there any connection between the Bruford Levin material and this? Because in some ways it's similar. David's on both, and I'm just wondering, is this any continuation, or was it totally unconnected?
I would say connected by friendship and some kind of, and whatever our musical kinships are, probably across all the way around is my guess. Me and definitely with Tony and I, we played together quite a bit in at least more than a few different situations, not all of them at the same time, right? Like, because you played on David's Heathen record, but I wasn't there, and maybe you played on the next day also, I think, and we weren't in the same room. But I would say there's a connection, but maybe it's not like it certainly doesn't sound the same.
Oh no, it doesn't.
Well, Sean, everybody's different, but generally, I don't think we think about. Well, we don't like. Okay, David and I did this record. Let's take that and go somewhere. You could think that, but we generally don't. We just hear the music or write the music and go from there. And the fact that I've done other trios, maybe not, but quartets with David Thorne, we didn't discuss it or it had nothing to do with our thinking. You might hear it and say, well, that sounds like Tony playing with David Thorne on Cloud About Mercury or something.
Sure.
But that's not my process or really our process.
Right. This was totally fresh.
To play with Alan White was something I always wanted to do and didn't quite get to do it with the John Lennon. We were both in at different times, and or the Yes thing. And
exactly. Well, I'd love to talk a bit. I'd love to talk a bit about both of those in a few after we talk about this. I was wondering if we could talk a bit about a few of the titles. You've got some really amusing ones, and I was wondering how you came up with those. Ones like Ultra Mullet, The Eggman Cometh, Prom Night of the Centipedes, and Monkey Mind, which seems to come up occasionally. There's a similar King Crimson live album with a similar name.
Scott's the one with the memory. Scott, tell me it wasn't anything to do with me. I hope not.
I know for a fact that Tony came up with Prom Night of the Centipedes, which is still by far and away my favorite song title. I think the rest of it we just kind of threw out. I think David came up with a few, Alan came up with a few, I came up with a few. So
in other words, nobody's willing to take the blame.
Except for Prom Night of the Centipedes, Tony definitely has to take the blame for that one.
Wow.
I have like zero memory cells, really. So I'm not zero, but very close.
And I
don't remember.
There's a thing about naming songs, especially songs. Songs are one thing, but in naming instrumental tracks, we've all been through it really a lot. You play the track and maybe you call it song number 1, or maybe you call it goof, song, whatever. And then way near the end, the name gets changed, maybe even the day before the album artwork goes in, or it gets changed a couple times. And then, fast forward a year later, you're playing it on the road and someone says, hey, let's do Prom Night of the Centipedes. And you're like, what's that? Oh, that's in G. That's the song number 4.
Sure.
So I don't know about you guys, but I've been going through that pretty much most of my adult life. And so I've long since admitted to myself, I don't remember the title and the music don't really connect in my brain until I've been hearing it night after night.
Sure.
So,
Yeah. Not like a vocal tune where the hook is repeated and you're like, oh,
exactly.
late in the evening. Of course.
Yeah.
Every once in a very blue while, I think of a title before I'm writing something and then write it. But that might be an offshoot of being a long time ago actually writing songs, and I start thinking of a lyric or something, and then and often that happens, and then I do exactly what Tony just said anyway. I'll just name it after it's done because it changed, and I'll change the title of it because my feeling for it may have changed completely. I like writing titles while you're sending the credits in to be printed.
or saving the first MP3. It's like, I better name it now.
How about you? How about you, Alan? Do you have a method of naming songs?
Yeah, well, my feeling with when we do stuff with Yes like that, we name all the songs, but then everybody in the world asks me, the first question is, oh, what's the name of it? And then you go, we don't name the album before we put the songs on there. It's, it's that's the last thing for us, But yeah, well, some interesting titles on the new acid. There's a one called The Ice Bridge, which is kind of very strange kind of title for the music, but at the same time, I was loving all the new stuff, new Yes stuff that is around, and the titles of them. But when I write, it seems to be the last thing I think of is what to call the song.
Yeah.
Can't wait to hear the Yes stuff, by the way, of course.
Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit more about the new Yes album, Alan, now that it's kind of taken form in demo versions and such? Can you describe some of the tunes, what they're like musically?
Yeah, I didn't quite get that.
Yeah, I was just curious about the new Yes album, and if you could maybe describe, musically what some of the songs are shaping up to be like so far.
Oh, well, it's different yet again. There's a lot of Yes albums are totally different from the last one.
Oh, yeah.
And this one's different yet again. I think it'd be quite surprising to quite a few people. There's some more commercial kind of stuff on it, let's say that. But there's also a few way out kind of stuff, It's a mixture.
Okay. Any epic stuff? Anything 10 minutes long or so?
Well, we don't have the energy anymore to play for, like 27-minute tracks, But no, a lot of it's 7, 5, 7, 8,
Okay.
that kind of stuff.
And who's
Alan, I really enjoy doing 27-minute tracks now that I'm older, because you get to take like a little naps in the middle of the piece.
Yeah.
drum solo?
Drum solo, yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, that's what happened on that track. You called it white noise, and it was me just coming in one day and flailing out all over the place. And then
I like that one a lot.
thank you God you turned it into something, because I was just going, oh, what happened?
Oh, well, your performance on that album was really amazing, Alan.
Yeah.
They definitely brought out some different directions that we hadn't heard you go in many years, I don't think. So it was exciting to hear you really lay into it like that.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun doing it, and I kept looking at Scott sometimes and I go, what are you going to make of this? And like Tony said, I still haven't counted the time signatures. I wouldn't even start because you just put 4/4 in a bag and shake it up a bit, and it's kind of still all in my head, and
Oh.
I just know it like that.
Hey, we have a question.
Do you want to hear the inside baseball short story of how these three studs, because I don't think anyone else could have done it the way they did it. Do you want to hear how this came about?
Yes, please.
So first step was Alan in Seattle. And I purposely said I want everything in 4/4 because what I don't want to do is I want to have freedom. If it's in 4/4, I could have freedom. I'd have to put a tempo map together for future songs, just everything in 4/4. And I literally said to Alan, here's the click, your drums are mic'd up, go. And I might say, I said, Alan, channel Relayer, which is my favorite Yes album. And I sat back, we pressed record. So Alan is just ripping for an hour. We'd stop the tape. Okay, try this, Alan. Speed up this tempo, slow down the tempo. So we left with like 2 hours of Alan's drums in all these different
How much
tempos.
was in 4/4?
Everything was in 4/4.
Oh, it was, okay.
Yes.
To begin with, yeah.
Well,
Go ahead, Dan.
I told Scott, I said, I don't know how to play in 4/4 anymore. And then that's where we started.
Yeah.
That's a good start.
Yeah, I can relate. I can relate.
It'll come back to you. Just start.
But I wanted to have everything in 4/4, so when I put everything together, I wouldn't have to make a tempo map, and I could cut it up and maybe change the beats a little bit.
Sure.
After that, so I put Alan's stuff together. Then Tony came to New Zealand, and we sat down. So I had maybe 15 of Alan's songs that I put together. There were drum beats, different tempos, still at 4/4. I said, Tony, just jam, play through. So he'd play through each song. Then we'd start over. I'd say, don't listen to what you just did. Freestyle something else. So he maybe didn't remember what key he was in, what chords he was using, and he would jam. Then Tony and I put that together. And poor David. Now this is where it gets really interesting. So we said, what guitar? We didn't have a guitarist at this point. So we said, what guitars can we get? And Tony turned to me and said, there's only one that could do this. There's only one on the planet, David Torn. And I hadn't known David's work. I grew up, my favorite band in the world was Yes and King Crimson. So here I am, I'm in awe that I've worked with my two heroes. Tony says, David Torn. I go, David Torn. I'd start listening to his stuff. It's like, oh my God, you're right. He's the only one that can do this. So we get David aboard. We go to David's. Tony and I fly to New York. We go to David's place. I didn't let David hear the music. He probably doesn't remember this. Before we showed up, I wouldn't let him hear it because I wanted it to be improv, freestyle. Did the same thing for
As if it wouldn't have been anyway, but
so we just pressed record, and we had Tony's parts, different of Tony's parts, and David just played. And I remember he'd stop, he'd go, what the hell is this?
Actually, I actually said, what the fuck about 1,000 million times. Looking around going, wait, what happened? I could do something here if I know what that is. A couple of times, and I just went, anyway, don't mean to interrupt. Go ahead.
No, but just watching these experts do this record that way was just mind-blowing. So we emerged from David's with a massive jigsaw puzzle of thousands of parts, and then spent 4 months putting everything together. And that's how this record came about. Very different, purposely done different. I think Tony and I decided to kind of purposely do something that maybe hadn't been done before. And so I wanted the fans to hear the inside baseball story of Levin, Torn, White, and just working with these guys, knowing that these three guys were just stunning.
And didn't you also have a mixing and mastering partner during the course of this, who whose name I can't remember at the moment.
The person that mixes most of the Lazy Bones records is Tony Lash. So once we finished everything and we sent it to you, Tony mixed the record. But Tony Levin and I pretty much put it all together and
arranged it.
Arranged it.
And I should mention Larry DeVivo, our friend and local guy up in Saratoga Springs, mastered it at Silvertone Mastering.
That's who I was thinking of too.
Yeah, Larry.
Yeah.
Excellent.
So great teamwork on this thing, and that's how it happened.
Awesome. Well, thanks for the details, Scott. Appreciate that. Tony, what gear did you use on this one? Is it a mixture of stick and regular bass, or?
Yeah, a few basses. It was what I brought to New Zealand, I guess. So probably one bass or maybe two, and a lot of Chapman stick. Varies on different tracks. I don't think I played any upright on it. I didn't hear it in this. Again, Scott would know the details, but am I right, Scott, that it's what I brought to New Zealand for that trip?
Yeah, it was mostly stick and bass and a ton of crazy effects pedals. That was the main thing that really put it over the top.
Wasn't there a little bit of the upright on that last piece that the new piece that we did at my place and you took home, T? Or am I wrong? Maybe it was electric.
Well, once I was home, I could have done anything. I don't really know. I don't remember.
Yeah, me neither.
Here's what I remember. Arriving in New Zealand, even though it was 10 years ago, the dogs have something to say about this. I was amazed. I flew in international, and then to get to where Scott is, I had to get a domestic flight. And there was no security at all in the terminal, in the domestic terminal, or on the flights. I mean, to test your memory, if some of you can remember this, they just gave me the boarding pass and said, okay, wait, and then we'll open the door. And all I had was a boarding pass, no ID, no searching my stuff. And
wow.
When I got to where Scott was, I had traveled all the way from New York to New Zealand, but forget that, I was aghast and amazed at that, and almost, it was very emotional for me because it reminded me of when I was very young, when that's the way it was. So I had to share that with you. That was part of my trip, and probably in some way it affected or infected what I played on the tracks.
In a good way.
In a good way, yes, definitely.
Yeah. And David, what guitars and gear did you use?
Oh man, I think I used two electrics, a Cole Tornado, and I think I might have played a DePergo Stratocaster style guitar. I played. Did I play oud on anything, Tony?
I think so.
I think
I seem to remember. Was there an amplifier with a light bulb sticking out the top?
That's true.
How loud it played, that it took voltage away from the amp?
Yeah, we were in the middle of building that amp, that Bogner amp, and it used a light bulb as a way to compress and attenuate the volume of the amplifier while you were playing it.
Of course. That old trick.
A bunch of fuzz boxes, all my typical looping devices. I was pretty mild with the looping stuff. I don't think I did a lot of glitching, but maybe a little bit with the glitchy stuff, pedals, but tons of pedals and two acoustic guitars, an very old National wood body acoustic, and I think I played some resonator guitar, a steel bodied resonator on something somewhere. It was really fun. We were in my room, which is really small and crowded, and it was the three of us, me, T, and Scott, and I didn't want to engineer and play at the same time, so we had Robert Fraza come in and record my stuff, I think, while I was playing. So it's, I don't think my room has ever been that crowded before nor since.
David, you're known for some very unique guitars that you play, and I was kind of wondering where your love of these unique ones first started, and what was like the first one that you had that was a little left of center. Was it like maybe an Ovation breadwinner or something in that ballpark, or?
No, it start the real story is that it started because I started modifying guitars in the early 70s because I was never happy with what they were when you bought them. But by the late 70s, the first one that I actually paid for was made by a really sweet guy who lived downtown New York, whose name was Alan Gittler. The trumpeter Don Cherry, whom I was playing with while we were on tour in Europe, he actually, in England, he said, I think you should meet my friend Alan the next time you're in town. Go down to, you'll find him on Canal Street. He'll be busking with one of his guitars. I have his phone number. Of course, he never gave it to me. So I went down to Canal Street, and this guy, Alan Gittler, had, you've seen these before. Andy Summers eventually got one. It looks like, it just looks like a steel rod, a stainless steel rod, and there's no wood on it anywhere. And there are stainless steel rods that are perpendicular to the main rod, and they are the frets, and there's only air between it. There's nothing behind it. I played that for a bunch of years until I realized that I couldn't modify it.
Okay. Well, if anybody's wondering about that, it's in the Synchronicity 2 video.
Oh yeah.
Futuristic.
Yeah.
You know, everybody had one of those post-apocalyptic Mad Max wannabe videos, and that's one.
I'm pretty sure that mine got the guy who I sold it to. I'm pretty sure it's in the Museum of Modern Art. That one, the original one that I had, which was number 7 or number 11. Yeah. It was crazy, but I like to play with sound still, and no matter what the instrument is. So that's really what drives all that the weirdness. And you know, I'm definitely not averse to having something look like I want it to look. It took me years to get a pink guitar, Tony, but I finally got one had one made in 2011 or something. That's kind of been my main guitar for a bit of a while now.
Excellent. All right. And Alan, what kit were you using back on this particular album?
I had a regular, Ludwig kit. It was it wasn't my stage kit, but I've got about 5 or 6 of identical kits in different colors. You know, obviously I tuned it like I like to tune it. And it has 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18 toms, and just a regular 22 bass drum with a double bass drum pedal. No double bass drums kind of thing.
Are you still playing Ludwig now?
Yeah.
Pretty much. Have you always been a
when
Ludwig?
I can. Yeah. When I can get to playing.
Sure.
I have one in my studio behind me, but that's a smaller kit. It's almost like a jazzette type kit.
Okay. Hey, I got a few questions in the chat room I wanted to run by y'all before I let them slip away here. Hold on a second. Many highs and hellos. My friend Doug says, Alan's work on the album is fantastic. My favorite work of his in years. So congratulations on that one. And my friend Derek, fellow drummer, said, hello and thanks to Alan for being a lifelong influence. And my friend Floyd says, have any of you done any online live collaborations with software like Jam Kazam, Instagram Live, or any of those other platforms?
Oh.
No? Okay, because there's some software there where you
are any of them good?
Are they good? Well,
yeah, Sean, do you know?
Well, they're always sending emails saying, we're getting better about latency. So I think they still have some issues, but
there is that.
It does seem to be improving. I tried it a couple times and I don't know. It's like you got to plug in your Ethernet for starters. Any Wi-Fi, forget it. You know, that's not going to work. You know, so it's I haven't known it to work, but I don't know. I haven't really taken to it personally yet.
So sooner or later they'll have it working.
Yeah, I don't really want to do it until there's no latency. I really don't.
I hear you. Me too.
I mean, I'm aware that I play out of time even when I'm playing in time, but I don't like the idea that somebody else has inserted, you know, whatever, like 18 milliseconds in between that. It's
right.
Just, This seems like a bad idea.
No, I mean, it seems like it's kind of good for playing individually. Like, here, I got a new idea to lay on you.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
playing together, I don't know. I got another question. My friend Derek asks, speaking of naming things, he wonders if Fly From Here had any inspiration from Alan's friendship with Richard Branson.
With Richard Branson?
Yeah,
No,
I mean, you guys go
nothing
back
to
pretty
do with
far.
Richard. Fly From Here was the song that came from Trevor Horn.
Yeah.
Initially. No, Richard has already flown from here a long time ago.
Okay.
But he's actually still a good friend, but you know, he's got so many projects going, especially at the moment. He's got a thing going to the moon and all kinds of stuff. But he hides away on his island, and I haven't seen him for 3 or 4 years.
Okay. Well, we all remember the infamous story of you going roller skating with him and
Oh dear.
ankle. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
how long you got on this?
Oh, yeah. No.
Do you want the long story or the short one?
We'd have to do another show for that one.
Basically, yeah, after 2 bottles of wine between the two of us, we went roller skating, and I thought I twisted my ankle, but in fact, I'd broken my leg. The only problem was we were halfway through a Yes album, and I had to call the studio and say, guess what? I've broken my leg, and everybody just flew off home.
In hindsight, do you feel like that was a blessing in disguise? Because it seems like that kind
It was. The music wasn't very good either.
Yeah, I've heard some of the outtakes, and they're okay, but it just sounded kind of like Tormato reheated or something, and it seems drama so much fresher and
yeah. Actually, Tormato is not one of my favorite albums, but
you did
there's
some
a
great
couple of
drumming on
great
it.
tracks. The track I did with Chris Squire of the drum bass kind of solo thing in that Silent Wings of Freedom. That song is pretty cool. It's about the best thing on the album.
Oh yeah, it's a peak track for sure. I'd love to see you guys dust that off live sometime. Has anybody ever considered it in the last 20 years?
Silent Wings of Freedom?
Yeah.
Well, Billy Sherwood, who plays with the band now, he's been dying to play it. So maybe on the next tour.
Okay. I got a kind of a yes question for you. There was a song, Roy Thomas Baker was your producer on that Paris album that didn't happen because you broke your ankle. There's a song on there called A Friend of a Friend, which bears a striking resemblance to a song by the Cars called Hello Again that came out a few years later. I wonder if you've ever heard about any connection, like maybe that was a riff that Chris came up with and he just recycled.
Well, it might have been unconscious that happened.
Yeah, well, yes.
Roy has a great ear. He gets incredible drum sounds in the studio. But he's always very particular in what he wants, and I think when we did Heaven and Earth, that album, I had something like 48 microphones on my drum kit. And I said, why? I had 16 mics on my bass drum in different locations. And he said, no, this is the way I want it. And I said, okay, go ahead,
It reminds me of a story of a drummer once having his kit set up and he's like, Mike the blowhole. And it's like,
yeah, Mike the blow. Well, he did actually mic underneath the kit with 3 or 4 microphones. And I said, why are you doing that? Anyhow, interesting character, Roy.
Absolutely. While we're thinking about Yes for a moment, Tony, any memories of recording the Union album?
Oh, sure.
Yeah. I mean, the ABWH one's pretty well chronicled with in the Big Dream video and all that, but the Union one was a little cloudy. So I was wondering if you could fill us in a bit on.
I don't know what details. We did it in France, and went to back up. When it began, it wasn't a Yes album at all. It was Anderson, Bruford, Wakeman, Howe.
Number 2.
And somehow in the realms that I have nothing to do with, it got decided that the two, that band would merge with Yes, the real Yes, what I think is the real Yes, and that they would be united. And hence the right bass player, Chris Squire, would be the Yes bass player, not me, and that's fine with me. So we went to France, and wonderful. I don't remember the name of the studio, but a famous studio out in the vineyards with grapes being grown around and home grown wine.
Yeah.
We had a good time, and it was a little how should I put it? Jonathan, I can't think of his last name. The producer wasn't a guy who knew the musicians, so there was a little maneuvering of decisions about how the album should come out, and I don't think the guys were that thrilled with the way it came out. The guys in the band, and typical for rhythm section, I was in at the beginning, maybe for a few weeks of tracking, and then I was gone, and I never really was part of the decision making or what happened after that. So
did you ever hear it? Did you ever hear it once it was finished?
Probably then. That was a long time ago.
Did you cut all the tracks live with Bill in the studio?
Yeah, live. Yeah, sure.
Okay.
With the option of overdubbing, but we're all in the same room. And
Sure.
I think I remember Rick Wakeman that there was some what the English call football playoffs going on, and Rick was very distracted with that. So he actually disappeared for part of the recording. Al is laughing, so it must have not been.
Well, I work with Rick, and quite honestly, his concentration sometimes wanders in the studio when he's not playing. He just, does other things, but he's great. I worked with Rick for a long time. I remember cutting some tracks on the Tomato album, as you brought up before. And I spent the whole time cutting a back-end track with him throwing peanuts at me in the studio. And his occasional cymbals go,
How'd you get that cymbal sound? Oh, peanuts.
Cymbals. It's a special.
Where do you get that from?
Well, I think it's all very easy for him. He's technically such a wizard that certainly in those sessions I was talking about, he could come in and just do it one take, and then he's ready to go watch some football, and the rest of us are struggling to get the right sound and the right feel and all this.
I know.
He's like, well, I already did it.
Absolutely. Alan, how do you feel about Union all these years later?
Well, I did the tour, and
tour was amazing.
I call it the Onion Tour, by the way. Union.
Well, no more tears, man. That live.
There was so many people on stage, and I really enjoyed working with Bill on that. We were both very compromising and about each other's style on playing Yes music, and we talked a lot about it in the beginning and decided which one was right for the right guy, and we allocated after that. But it ended up, I did a lot of the kind of meat and potato stuff, and Bill played a lot of electronic percussion on the top.
Yeah, that's how Bill put it. He said he was the hollandaise sauce, and you were the meat and potatoes.
Well, you could put it like that, I guess. All I remember was seeing him standing, playing all the electronics, and he back-faced to me on stage because it was a circular stage, and I just saw his arse reeling all night. His butt was just going, and I said, Bill, can you please stop doing that? It puts me off.
Getting into the groove,
Bill was a great guy. I get on really well with him.
And you'd met him a number of times before that tour, right? I mean, you had met Bill back in the 70s. Well, you met him, I mean, when you joined Yes, right?
Say again?
When did you first met Bill, when he was in Yes? Did you see him much after you joined Yes in the 70s?
Not really, not for a while, but then he came to gigs a couple of years later. He started coming to gigs, and we chatted a lot, became good friends.
Yeah. Well, it was great to see you both on stage together. That was, a one-of-a-kind tour, and I'm so glad I was old enough to see it.
Yeah.
These days don't know what they.
It'd be interesting to see that lineup again, that's for sure.
Yeah, I would love to see another union of some sort. Any memories of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame night? That seemed like almost a union, you know.
Well, somewhat. Yeah.
Yeah, kind of a forced one.
Well, to see Steve Howe playing bass guitar on stage was blowing me away because Geddy wouldn't play Owner of a Lonely Heart. He only wanted to play Roundabout. So Steve played the bass, and
On Owner.
he hated every moment, I think. He didn't like it at all.
Yeah, I recall Andre ran out and picked him up one just for the gig.
Yeah.
So, you know, it was kind of on the fly. Well, it's on a box set now of different Rock and Roll Hall of Fame performances. So if anybody wants to check it out, it's out there and it's on YouTube as well. So David, I wanted to ask you a bit about playing and working with Jeff Beck and how you came to work with him. He did a series of kind of techno inspired albums back in the 90s, and you were on the third one, the self-titled Jeff album. And one of my favorite tracks on there is a tune called Plan B. I was wondering if you could tell me a bit about how that was put together, because it seems like Jeff kind of sent you various licks and then you assembled them into something greater. Is that right?
It's sort of like that. He sent me a tune, but that he was unhappy with. So they sent me a whole multi-track, and he said basically he had just called one day, or I can't remember. I think his manager's name was Ralph at that time. The old managers, can't remember the dude's name, but Jeff called and said, "I've got this record. I'm gonna throw it away. They really want me to try to make this into a record, and I've got at least 3 tunes that I don't like, and I don't know what to do with them. And you know, we're going to send them to you, and you tell me what you think, and then if you think you can do something with them, I'll send you the multi-tracks." So he sent me 3, and I said, "Yeah, I'd do all of these, sure. I'd try them all on," and that was it. And he just handed me the multi-track. So I wrote intros and outros and breakdowns. I changed some chord things. I took the rhythm tracks and I would say I modified them deeply. That's probably an understatement. I really fucked them up because there was stuff there. I knew what he didn't like. He told me what he didn't like. It wasn't super complicated. It was just, I don't like this because it's too square. I don't like this because it's too square. Can you do anything electronic anywhere? And I had the opportunity to do that. So that's what went down. And we did actually get a Grammy for one of the tunes, best rock instrumental. I don't even know what that means, but I don't even know what a Grammy means, but that happened. I have no idea, you know, how that happened, but it did.
Well, I love the way they turned out, and I think this wound up being my favorite tracks on the album. You know, I think he was, you know, going for a really fresh sound with that whole era, and yet that was even fresher than what he was going for, I think. So
he definitely liked it a lot. And we tried to do some stuff later on, actually around 2008 or so. I wrote some tracks for him raw, but our communication he was in the middle of changing managers. He had these managers who were his managers for his entire life, and in the middle of us trying to do this thing while Jeff was on the road, I was writing some tunes for them to play. Vinny and I forgot the bass player's name.
Tal Welkenfeld.
Yeah, Tal.
Okay.
Tal, is that her
Awesome.
first name? Yeah.
Yeah.
So I wrote some tunes, and it was just impossible to communicate with Jeff. So I couldn't time it with the work that I was doing, and eventually it just kind of fell apart. And the new manager was a bummer. I mean, he's probably a great manager, but he was just a drag to talk to. It was one of those situations where I was like, well, I have a lawyer. Maybe my lawyer could talk to this guy because I couldn't do it. It was hard, but it was really fun working with him. It was fun hanging out when we finally met in New York. It really good. It's really enjoyable and a joy. If I did it again, I'd probably do. It was really fun working with his guitar tracks, and it was really fun playing on that record too. Playing not just keys and electronics, but actually I played acoustic guitar on those tunes and some electric, but mostly acoustic. It was really fun.
Yeah, great stuff. Look them up. Yeah. Look it up if you haven't heard it yet, folks. I got another question in the chat room real quick. Another one about the new Yes album. Alan, who's doing the bulk of the writing for the new Yes album, and have you written anything for it?
I sent a couple of things in that I think were used in different ways. There's like intros and stuff like that. But a lot of the writing has been done by Steve and John Davison.
Okay.
He's written some great stuff on this.
Okay.
And actually, John Davison is singing like a bird right now.
Oh, he's awesome.
Really sounds good. And so, you know, like I say, the seed started over there with Steve on his farm in the countryside. Mm-hmm. And John was living in London at that time. And so that started the kind of birth of the new album. And then we all started contributing kind of things. And I ended up putting the drums on over in Los Angeles.
Okay, so how close to being done would you say it is?
It's kind of in the mixing stages.
Okay, well,
I'd say with subject to another couple of tracks that, you know, we've got a lot of material. I think there's 11 or 12 songs in.
Okay, so do you think we'll see that maybe by the summer?
Possibly.
Okay, well,
yeah, crossed, you know. Late spring, summer. You know, I'm hoping.
It's always great fun.
Let's see if we can get on the road next year and promote it. But you know,
oh yeah, well, it's
always like casting your fate to the winds.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, I'm hoping that this year's better. I think that vaccine is going to make a big difference. So maybe by middle of the year things can start to get back to normal. Fingers crossed. Scott, you just did a new album with Mike Keneally. I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's called MFTJ.
Which
so it's Mike and I, Mankind's Final Traffic Jam. How's that?
Well put. How apropos.
That name came up before the virus, so you know you could look
even
at it.
Jammier now.
Yes, and it's our second album, and I would say that the two MFTJ albums probably are most similar to Levin Torn White in terms of the way we did it.
So yeah.
So I'll do the drums and some of the rhythm tracks, and then send it to Mike, and he'll just freestyle bass, guitar, keys on 20, 30 tracks, and then I'll go in there and hunt and peck and put it together. That's how that happened.
Yeah, how often does it land on a good, like when you're hunting and pecking, are there different versions that you do sometimes of a song and you kind of wind up at the ultimate one, or do you just kind of start building it and each one is kind of the track?
Really depends. I mean, I'll just go through and find, little snippets, whether they're 4 bars, 8 bars, and line them up. And it's just so hard to answer that question because there's so many different ways to do it.
Yeah, I'm sure every song's different. Where's the best place to get it, and remind them what it's called? It's got a really humorous.
It's called MFTJ. My Mom's Getting a Horse is the name of the album, and you can get it at Bandcamp or lazybones.com.
Perfect. And y'all know Mike Keneally, from Zach.
Oh yeah.
And most recently Joe Satriani's side man. And it's nice to see him get up there and cut heads with Joe. He brings a whole new dimension to a Joe show, Very cool. I was wondering if Alan and Tony could each share a John Lennon story with us. What's one that pops in your head?
You want to go first, Tony?
No, I want to hear yours.
Well, Well, you know, I always tell people I was so young when I recorded all of Imagine and all that kind of stuff in the studio, and I never really thought anything of it. I thought it was just another gig, you know. This was another stepping stone in the music business. And when I got the call from John, I didn't really think it was him, and I put the phone down, and he called back, and then he said, "No, this is John, and can you come and play in Canada?" And that was Live Peace in Toronto, the live album, and then the next thing I did was Instant Karma in the studio, and then that led to going down to Tittenhurst and for about 10 days every day and clocking in, and we'd start recording around lunchtime and listen to ideas of John's. And then one thing I do remember very vividly was the fact that John, whenever we recorded anything, he showed me all the lyrics to the whole album. And whenever we did one track, he'd give me the lyrics to that track and ask me if I wanted to play in it, because this is what I was going to say to the world. And I think what he was pointing towards was the track called How Do You Sleep at Night, that he wrote about Paul. And he wanted to make sure nobody felt that they were going to offend Paul. It's one Beatle I've never played with, and I've got a feeling. Denny Lane told me that Paul had me in mind to play with Wings, but I've got a feeling because I played with John and all that kind of stuff, it never came about.
Okay.
Anyhow, I thought John was an amazing person. I was very inspired by him. He became more like a fatherly figure to me when I was there. And we got on really well, sit and have dinner around the table every night. And that's how I met George, of course. And then from then played on All Things Must Pass.
Yeah, I think I saw some footage of you in the studio with John and George that surfaced probably in the last year, I think. I can't remember what song it was, but it was fascinating. I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
I think George was playing slide guitar. It might have been when George was playing with John, you saying?
I think so. I mean, I could be mistaken, but I could have sworn it was some footage from that era.
Yeah, he did play on one song there. And then the song I remember him playing was Isn't It a Pity, which is kind of like a Dylan thing.
Oh,
And
yeah.
All Things Must Pass, which is a great song.
Oh, it's beautiful. You know, I think George is my favorite slide player. You know, he just has such a melodic style, and it's kind of devoid of the typical blues cliches that most slide players seem to favor. So it's so same with Steve and his lap steel. You know, it's so melodic and uplifting.
That was a very enjoyable period in my life playing with John and George. You know, only years later did I look back and go, did I do all that stuff? You know.
I'm wondering, were you familiar with with Yoko's vocal improv style, and were you surprised when she broke into it?
Yeah, I actually recorded on Yoko's live album, Fly, in the studio. And we did it at the studio in London. And we recorded Hare Krishna in the same place. I remember recording, and they were all out playing the guitars in the studio, and I was in a booth, and I had the headphones on, and we're going through drum checks and all that kind of stuff. And then I kept saying to the engineer, I said, I think there's a feedback coming from somewhere. And John said, no, she'll go in a bag on the floor over there. She was just wailing away, and I went,
Excellent.
oh, yeah, sorry.
Oh.
You know, feedback's not necessarily a bad thing to compare it to, you know.
Yeah, well, in key.
Oh.
And Tony, how about you? Any particular
Well,
memory come to
first,
mind?
did we just, Alan, did you just tell us that when John called you, you thought it wasn't him and you hung up on him?
Yeah. I was actually cooking a vegetable stew to keep my band alive because we were starving and we had no money. So I was in the kitchen.
And he called you back?
And then somebody from the office did, but then he
Okay.
got on the phone.
Wow.
He said, no, it's me. I want you to come to Toronto tomorrow morning. And he said, I'll send a car for you. And I said, oh, okay.
Wow.
That's how my relationship started.
Well, that reminds me of this is not about John, but when a long time ago, John McLaughlin called me to ask if I wanted to join the Mahavishnu Orchestra. I
Wow.
wasn't home, and my in-laws, whom I was living with at the time, took the call, and they had actually never. This was in the countryside of the U.S. They had never heard an English accent, and they gave me the message that Murray Vishnu and his orchestra called me to do a gig. Murray Vishnu and his orchestra,
Great.
which, as you can imagine, I was not interested in doing.
The very first time I talked to Bowie, my phone rang. I was in the studio. It was like 6:30 in the morning, 6:35, something like that. And the phone rings, and it's an unknown number from either New York or New Jersey. And I went, who the fuck is calling? Because they called like 2 or 3 times. And then about 40 minutes later, the same number rang yet again. And I thought, oh, wait, didn't somebody tell me that maybe David Bowie's office was going to call? And so I picked up the phone and I went, hello. And he goes, hello. I'm like, hello? He goes, David? And I said, yes. And he said, oh, it's David. I heard you get up very early. And
You do now.
Said, I'm so sorry. Was that you calling already? And he said, yeah. And I felt like such a dope. But the phone was ringing at 6:35 in the morning. You know, I didn't want to know about somebody dying while I was, getting my shit together.
Usually why you get a call at that hour. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I got a call from somebody claiming they were the telephone repairman yesterday, and I didn't believe it, so I hung up on them. That's my story.
Yeah.
Is that even a thing anymore? The telephone repairman's a guy that replaces your cracked screen these days.
Yes.
That's about it. Tony, did you have a John story to
Not much. I only the sessions were a couple of weeks and not that much. But ironically, like Alan, I wasn't over the moon to be there. I was thrilled to have the chance to play with John, but I wouldn't say I was blasé about it. But I was okay. We're going to make some music, and kind of only in retrospect it became so important to me, which it was important to me. And I remember his words when he didn't know who I was, and he in a very New York in your face way, he said, nice to meet you. They tell me you're good, just don't play too many notes. Those were his first words to me. And I said, yeah, don't worry, I won't. Don't.
Well, my relationship with Phil Spector was, he said, whatever you're doing, I was putting like tambourine on, and he'd go, okay, now do 15 more times. So we'd have 15 tambourines, all doing the same thing. Wow. Then he'd mix them into one, and I found him quite strange to work with. I don't know about you. I mean, he was a character.
Do you remember Phil Collins dropping into those sessions for All Things Must Pass?
No.
Because I heard some stories. Yeah, I heard a story where he recently got a master or a recording of some tambourine work he did that never made the record. And he's like, boy, I can tell why it didn't make the record now. So,
no, well, there's a funny story about that between me and Ringo, who I get on with really well. And My Sweet Lord, we did the track, and I said, well, the drumming's not that difficult. I said, why don't you get Ringo? He's here. So I felt a bit awkward. So I asked, George, and he said, no, I want you to play drums. Ringo can play tambourine. And then we recorded the track, and Ringo was standing on the other side of the partition between us, and I could see him through a glass window. And then we finished the track. He went to go and have dinner with somebody. And then Phil Spector came out with George. He said, Alan, can you hang around a bit? Can you replace the tambourine? And I said, no. I said, Ringo in there. So I didn't feel good about any of that. But anyhow, I've still got that tambourine. I kept that. It's hanging on the wall around here somewhere.
That's awesome.
Wow.
Alrighty. Well, let me take a peek at the chat room real quick, and then we'll wrap it up here pretty quick. I really appreciate you all taking the time to come by and chat today. It's a real pleasure.
Thanks.
All right, my friend Simeon says, David, I have Depergo, Cole, and Ronan, partially due to your posting online about these great guitar builders. Tell us a bit about these guitars and others you have owned and recommend. Short version.
Yeah, each one of those are special instruments for different reasons, and usually it has to do with, the ideas behind them and the builders who are making them. Mostly, I think those are the kind of guitars where you're actually in touch with the people who are making it for you. So if you have something special to do, they're usually there for it. And if it's something that's adventurous, they're usually ready to try something new. And that's kind of why I was with each of them in my own case. But they're still, all of them are great guitars. I only have the Ronans right now and some other guitars, but just because I'm insane, for no other reason than I'm completely insane.
My friend Frank actually asked this the last time. We had Stickman on a few weeks ago. Appreciate you coming back again, Tony. And he asked this last time and I missed it. So this time I'm definitely going to ask. Can you ask Tony about playing with Buddy Rich? I saw his name on the Tough Dude LP.
Yeah.
Any
I thought I might be muted. Yes, I was called in. I know it was in 1984, because the album was called Roar of 84. I knew all about the Buddy's playing, of course. I had been seeing the band whenever they played in Rochester. A good friend of mine had been his bass player, Joel DeBartolo, passed away, sadly, great bass player from Buffalo, had played with him and told me what it was like. And famously, there are so many famous stories about Buddy. When Buddy tuned his drums, he would turn to the bass player and say, give me an A. And Joel from Buffalo said, A, and got fired immediately.
Out of here.
Yeah, he learned that if he didn't already know that Buddy wants to be the one doing the lines, not have them go the other way. He got rehired and played with Buddy for quite a while. So I knew kind of what it was like. It was an amazing experience. We played a few nights with the big band in a club, and I got to experience the energy of playing with Buddy. It was great. And then there were 2 days booked for the album. For those who don't know, probably most people don't know, Buddy is famous for being a great jazz drummer, of course, but quite famous for firing guys in his band and for having a volatile temper. Okay, so I'm playing with him, and it's going fine. And then we go in the studio for the first day, and about an hour into the session, he gets really angry at the whole band and fires the whole band. Said, session's off, you guys are playing terrible. And I kind of moped as I packed up my bass. I was at that time a studio bass player. I wasn't in his band. I was not on the road with him like the other guys, but I wasn't used to such things happening. So I was sad. I mentioned it to another guy. He said, "Oh, don't worry. They'll call us in the morning. The manager will call us and hire us back, and we'll do the album in one day," which is exactly what happened.
Oh, that's
So
funny.
yeah, the next day we did the album.
So this had gone down before, obviously.
Yeah. But
Right.
in that jazz bebop tradition, I might say, he liked to keep the edge of it could be called fear or on edge. One was on edge in his band, even if one had been in a long time.
Sure. No, that's not surprising.
And by the way, since I'm in story mode, I'll tell this quickly. We then the next week, Buddy owned a club in New York at that time, and I played there for the week with a quintet with two excellent sax players, Sal Nistico and Joe Romano, Buffalo guys. Yeah, it was great in a quintet, and Buddy would do shtick a lot with the audience because it was a long night of just the quintet, and it was very interesting to me hearing them, the sax players who had been around him a long time. They were kind of from his era, and they were kind of giving him some stuff. Well, he'd be talking to the audience and doing stuff, and they'd go, and they would kind of swearing, but just at a level where he probably could hear them doing it, but he couldn't really bust them on what they were saying. And I got a big kick out of that. And notably, one of those nights, Mel Torme was playing in New York City, elsewhere. And Buddy wonderfully said to the audience, when Mel finishes his show, he's going to come here to the club, and we're going to seat him right in front, in the seat right in front. And I'm going to do he's telling the audience this, I'm going to do an elaborate introduction of him, and we'll put the spotlight on him. And when he stands up, I want nobody to clap. I want complete silence. It was great. And exactly what happened. Mel Torme turned around to the audience like this, and it was just silent. It was pretty cool.
That's a great
Cold,
look on
cold,
his face.
but
That's
cool.
awesome.
Oh, that's too funny. I got another quick question in the chat room here. My friend Erickson says, "Hey all, I'm a fan, as you may suspect. Do you have any advice for artists that are starting right now but want to make a living from music, or at least get their music heard?"
Say, I couldn't. You disappeared there. Sorry.
Basically, do you have any advice for artists that are starting right now but actually want to make a living from music, or at least get their music heard?
Well, it's very difficult now, especially with this pandemic. But I always tell people when I get this question at clinics, and that I was in that position once, where I was going, I know I can play pretty good, but I'm not getting anywhere, kind of thing. And then I always tell them to just persevere and keep on playing and don't give up, and make yourself as good as possible and play the music you like.
It's never been easy, and I don't want to be flip about it, but I think you'll find that guys like us really don't have the answer, that to some extent we're still trying to get our records heard and sold. And like Alan said, being devoted to it and saying, this is what I'm going to do, no matter the hurdles I have to cross, is almost the only way to be in the arts.
Yeah.
To be a painter or to be an actor or
persistence is the key. Okay, just a couple for you, Tony, and we'll wrap it up here. Any Levin Brothers music on the horizon?
We're my brother Pete and I are putting together a live album from tracks we recorded last time. I guess it was January we toured. I guess it was a year ago now.
Wow.
All touring. I have a schedule in some color that doesn't, some new color, because it's all tentative, and we hope to play a little, if not tour, play shows in the fall. And whether that'll be possible, of course, who knows? By the way, I've got Crimson tour that's booked, a tour of the US and a tour of Australia and Japan, and a Stickman tour of Europe. They're all sort of half booked, but they're tentative. We hope they'll all happen.
Fingers crossed on those, definitely.
Yeah.
When's the first date of any of those, Tony? I'm interested. Just
By the way, I gave them
tentative.
all those tours the same name, Vaccinating Rhythm. Oh, the Vaccinating Rhythm Tour. Oh, yeah. King Crimson's tour would be the earliest. That was booked to start in early June. And I think it, not officially, but roughly, it's been pushed back to July. And that's because it's sheds, it's quite doable. But who knows if it'll be.
Yeah, at least it's outside.
July would be the first date.
Okay.
Super.
And one more, the obligatory, when will there be another Peter Gabriel album question is popping up in the chat room a lot. Any,
I wish I knew.
have any tracks been cut in the last 10 years that might wind up on?
He's probably done a lot that I don't know about, but a few tracks were sent to me only a few months ago, which I very happily played on from home. And I haven't heard anything about whether they even downloaded my tracks, let alone the album's coming out. But it's a familiar feeling with Peter, with me, that goes back a long ways, that I never know what's going on, and suddenly there'll be an album. Like any fan, I hope there'll be an album and tours before long.
Yeah.
But I have no inside information.
Sure thing. Alrighty. Well, I guess we probably should wrap it up here. Thank you all so much for coming by today. Really excited.
Thank you, Sean, for having us. Very kind of you.
you.
It's a pleasure.
Thanks, Sean.
And again, if you want the Levin Torn and White album, the best place to get it at this point, not on vinyl because it's sold out, but just the CD version. Scott, where did you say? Bandcamp?
Bandcamp or lazybones.com.
That's right, your place. All righty then. Well, thank you all for coming by. I will be back Saturday afternoon. I'm chatting with Colin Edwin, the bass player from Porcupine Tree. He's got a new group out. We're going to catch up with him and see what he's been up to. It's he's in London, so it'll be a 4 p.m. kind of show rather than my late night thing that I do. So
thank you, guys.
It's my pleasure. Thank you, Alan.
See you guys.
Great to see you guys, all of you.
You guys.
Great.
Awesome seeing you guys.
Let's do it
Nice
again.
to meet you, Alan.
All right.
All right.
Let's do this again in 10 more years.
Oh, God. Anytime. You guys come
Or
back
this week.
anytime. Take care.
Take care.